Okay, so for our first lesson, we're going to work on equations. And you should remember quite a bit of this from past years, but we're just going to kind of do a quick review on it. So your first thing when you see an equation like this, you'll see the parentheses. And if you remember what to do with the parentheses, you want to distribute these numbers. So when we distribute that, we're going to get this as 3 minus 9x equals negative 8x plus 14. And then from here, what you want to do is you want to get all the variables on the same side. So to do this, we're going to take this negative 8 and add 8x to both sides. And the reason we're going to add 8x is because it will get rid of it from this side and literally move it to the other. So we have a negative 8x. That cancels out because negative 8x plus 8x is 0. And this is going to become negative 9 plus 8, which will give us a negative 1x. From here, we want to get x all by itself, so we need to move the other numbers. Even though this has a minus sign in between, this is a positive 3. So to get rid of a positive 3, we are going to subtract 3 to both sides. And then I'm going to get negative 1x equals negative 3. Or not negative 3, whoops. Equals positive 11. And then from here, we're going to divide negative 1 on both sides. And we're going to find out that x is equal to negative 11. Let's try a second problem. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do with this problem is the same as before. We have a parenthesis, so we have to distribute this 4. So I'm going to distribute the 4. I'm going to get negative 32x plus 20 is equal to negative 32x minus 26. From here, we're going to try to get all the variables on the same side. So I'm going to add 32x to both sides since it's negative. Well, negative 32 and 32 will cancel out, and negative 32 and 32 will cancel out. So I'm just going to be left with 20 equals negative 26. And when you see that, you should go, well, no, it doesn't. 20 doesn't equal negative 26. So what that tells us is this thing has no solutions. No matter what we do, we are not going to be able to find an answer, because the thing that changes the equations to make them the same are never going to be the same. Generally, in real life, these form parallel lines, so we know that they never cross or have an intersecting or solution. So, in this case, today in Canvas, you're going to put NS in any blanks that represent no solution. Let's try a third problem. In problem number 3, we're going to start this the exact same way. We are going to distribute that 4, and we're going to distribute this 4, which this is going to give me 8x plus 16x minus 12 equals 24x plus 16 minus 4. Now what we're going to do is get all the x's to the same side. We already have 2 x's on the same side, so we can actually just add these. So 8x plus 16x is 24x minus 12 equals 24x. And then we could just add these things together. So that would be just a plus 12. And from here, what we would get is we could subtract 24 to both sides and subtract 24 right here. Both these things will cancel, and we'll get negative 12 equals 12. And we know that that is not true, so this would be no solution. Let's change this problem just slightly and solve it one more time and see kind of what we could get. Okay, slight change to this problem, and so the first step would be the same. We'll distribute and distribute, and we're going to get 8x plus 16x plus 12 equals 24x plus 16 minus 4. that's going to give us 24x plus 12, and this equals 24x plus 12. And then we subtract 24 from both sides, or 24x from both sides. In this case, we would have 12 equals 12. And we actually know that that is true. And the question here is, when is that true? That is always true. So we would call that all solutions. So in this case, whenever you have two numbers that are equal to each other, what's going to happen is that would be an all solutions case. We're going to try one last types of problems. So we might do a couple examples of this, but these are probably the little bit trickier of equations. So this equation, a lot of people struggle with this because they see fractions and they go, oh gosh, I've never been good with fractions. How do I deal with this? I actually just like these equations because I just do opposite operations until I get things by themselves. So when I look through this, I think, what's blocking this x right here? Well, it's this division sign by 6. So I go, how do I undo that? Well, I undo that by multiplying by 6. Because if I multiply by 6, that will undo the division, and that will go away. Well, when I multiply by 6, multiplication is one of those operators that we call scalar operators. It doesn't just multiply one side and then the other. It multiplies literally everything in between. So every sign is going to get this multiplication symbol. So we're going to come through and multiply everything by 6. Well, that canceled out. So this just becomes x plus 3. Well, when you multiply something, it only multiplies the top. It never multiplies the bottom. So, because it really is 6 over 1, and you multiply the tops, and then you multiply the bottoms, and 1 times 5 is 5. So, it's just going to multiply the top. And this would become 72. Now, when we look at this, we would go, well, what's stopping this x from being free? It's that 5. So I would have to come through here and multiply everything through by 5. So this thing would be multiplied through by 5. This would be multiplied by 5. And this would be multiplied by 5. Well, that will cancel out. This will become 5x plus 15. And this will become plus 6x, because that 5 canceled, so it's gone. And then this would be 360. Now, once you have this, you can combine like terms, which would be 11x plus 15 equals 360. Then we could subtract 15 from both sides. Subtract 15 from both sides. Have 11x equals 345. And then we can divide by 11, which would be x equals, now I don't know what that is off the top of my head, so we'll get our calculator, which would be 31.6, because I rounded it. If you ever have a question, most times they'll say round to the nearest tenth on the assignments. If it doesn't, you'll probably get a whole number answer. I didn't sit through to make sure this would be a whole number, because I wanted to just mainly show the idea. So the big idea behind this is, instead of worrying about these things as fractions and trying to get like bases and combine everything, just do the opposite operation. And it's all the time going to be multiplication, and it will cross and cancel stuff out. Okay? We're going to try one more of these. Okay, so now we have this problem, and this time it's a little bit different because we have the x's on the bottom. But in all reality, it's not going to change anything. So when we do this, the first step I'm going to have is I'm going to go, okay, what is stopping me from doing anything? What's this division? And what are we dividing by? Well, we're dividing by x. So if I multiply x, that will cancel. So I'll multiply this by x, I'll multiply this by x, and I'll multiply this by x. Well, this is also dividing by x, so that will actually cancel out, which will leave us with 6x plus 3 equals 15x. And then what we can do is we can get all the x's to the same side. which is going to leave us with 3 equals 9x. And then we can divide by 9, which is going to give us x equals, well, 3 divided by 9 is 0.3 repeating. And that would be our final answer. So on any of these problems, just make sure, again, anytime you have a fraction, you never have to deal with a fraction. You can just multiply through that bottom and cancel it all out, and it should work out very, very nicely. Let me know if you need any help.